guys, welcome to my first tech tutorial. This is all coming off the top of the dome, so do expect a few mistakes and maybe a few as I mess up while I'm talking, something I'm terrible at. Now, for my first tutorial, this is not for beginners. Depending on the feedback I get from these videos, I might start doing more beginner-oriented JavaScript, React, and web-based development, also some server-side code, and we'll see from there. So for this application, it's a very bare bones login, as I said, where we get the user's information from Google so we can use this to log in our user. You can see here I have my profile picture, my email, my first name, and my last name is not tied to this account. So if I was to log in with my other one, you can see the profile picture is different. My first and last name are on this account, and also my email. So on the front end, I'm using React for this, and I'm also using the OAuth Google React library because it does a lot of heavy lifting for us, and I don't have to build this button myself. The only crucial thing we need here is the client ID, which I'll explain later. And then on the login page itself, this library does provide us with a button which communicates with the Google servers for us. So as you can see here, there's an onSuccess callback which has a credential in the object in the response. So if I was to log in here, I'm then posting this data to the backend, but I'll quickly just show you. This is the JWT token which we're getting from Google, and if I was to decode this, you can see all the information is here in this token, such as the picture, the given name and the family name of the user, and their email, and if it's been verified. So one thing I was mentioning before, I hope I mentioned it before, that a lot of these tutorials I saw weren't actually validating that this data was in fact from Google. Now what I mean by that is, if we had a malicious user, let me just quickly comment out some stuff. Now you can see we're going to be logging in with this HQ account, but if a user knew the shape of what Google sends, which is very easy to get, and then decide to put in their own information, so now if, say for instance, a user was trying to be malicious and try to impose as someone else, I'm just gonna hard code this token here. Now if I was to log in, we should see the same grumpy cat profile picture, but we should see the data is going to be different. So you can see here, email, donuts are good, and the first and last name is obviously not Mr. Donut Pancakes. So this is why I was mentioning a few of the tutorials were missing out a crucial step on validating this data was in fact correct. So if I go back to this code now and comment back in my previous implementation, if I was to try and log in with this altered JWT token, we should now get an error. See, there's an error logging in. You can see I'm logging out something in the console here, and it's complaining no PEM found for envelope. So basically this is complaining that whatever this token is not actually been sent from Google. It wasn't signed by them. As I said, I'm not going too in depth with this, but all these JWTs are signed by a private key, and the private key on this web app is different to the private key which Google is using to sign their token. So this is why, because I've altered the token here myself, and I tried hard coding it and sending it to the back end, it's now saying like, hey, I didn't sign this, like this isn't valid. So if I was to remove this again, so now we are sending to the back end the token which Google sends us, the app should then work again. So There we go, and now we're logging in. So basically, I'll quickly show you what's going on the server side, so then you guys, whatever applications you're building, you can start to implement this type of logic. Now, this is not a full production app at all. It's literally just the bare bones so you can understand the concepts, and then once you implement something, you'll add a lot more other, like for instance, the database here I'm using is just a JSON DB because I don't want to have to spin up a database for this simple application. But okay, so on login. So once on success from the Google servers, I get that data, and then I get that credential, which I'm then posting to my API auth login route. So this is the route here on the server side, and you can see I have this middleware which I made called validate Google auth. Now this is the important part, because this is where, again, I'm using a library. You wouldn't have to use this. You could even just do an API call to the Google servers manually, but again, these libraries do a lot of heavy lifting for us, and you just need the client ID, and then you'll be able to use it easily without having to manually do these API calls. So you can see they have a function here called verify ID token, where I'm sending the credential, which is this, to the Google servers, and then they're going to verify that this was indeed signed by them using their key. So, and then on the response from this data here is going to be pretty much the same data we've been seeing in this payload here. And then I'm returning this from my middleware. And then, yeah, so it's I'm returning on the user object in my middleware, which you can see here in this request.user. And then here I'm just doing something very simple where I'm checking if the user exists in our database, and if it does exist, I'll then return this data back to the front end. And if it doesn't exist, I'll then create a user, save it in the database, and then return this data to the front end. As I was saying, in a real app, you probably use a real database, but the concept here still remains the same. It's just this validate Google auth is the main thing I wanted to touch base on, because a lot of app tutorials I've seen have not been using this, and it's quite dangerous. As you saw earlier, I can just make a fake object, impose as a user which I know is in the database, and then if this check here is checking if the user exists by their email, it's very easy for a user to then manipulate this and impose as that user. So I think that's pretty much it in terms of the code. I will be posting this all onto my GitHub. Now I'm going to be showing about the Google console and this client ID which I've been talking about. I've got this saved in the env file, so I don't want you guys to see my credentials, but then I'll explain this now in a short moment. As I mentioned earlier, I'll be showing on the Google side how we set this up. So we just set up a new project, Google tutorial, which will create this. So now just wait for this to get created. Hopefully I should be in this project now. Yep. So we need to get some credentials. Now, this OAuth 2 client ID is what we want. As I said earlier on here, yep, this is that client ID. So before we do that though, we need to configure the consent screen. We'll do external, so this allows us to use any user. If not, if you do internal, you can whitelist certain users to only use it. Tutorial. I'm gonna have to blank this out in editing so you don't see my email and spam me. We don't want. You could add in a logo and other information on the consent screen. The consent screen, what I mean is this that pops up. This one here. You can add some As I said, you can, if you wanted to have extra security, which I do recommend in production, you'd have certain domains of your front-end application and also your back-end application, so you can whitelist these. But for the sake of this tutorial, we won't be doing that. I do need to have another email here. Again, hopefully I can block this out. Okay, so that's now is okay. We want to add in some scopes. We're going to want to select, I believe these two are the ones we want. Then we continue. I'm not going to be adding any test users. And that's that. So if we go back to credentials, we should be able to now add a key, a WAF client ID. It's a web application, client. I assume we're going to have to add in our So I'm adding in the client side app, which is running on localhost 3000, and also my server. And then also because of this, it's going to redirect the user. So once the user presses the sign in with Google button and they select the account, they're actually going to be getting redirected back to a web app. So we'll put our web app for this. And then we have this client ID here. So this is what I said, this client secret we never want to have on server side. You would have it on maybe you could have it on server side depending what you're going to do, but this is what we're interested in, this client ID. So now if I was to go to my application itself, and I would change this for the ID which we've just been given. And let's also change it on server side, which is this one here. The audience here. Then our application should now work as expected. You can see, because this is, as I said, we just set up this new project. You can see here now I called it donut tutorial, so this is showing up, giving it consent, and now we're able to log in again. Hey guys, so that was the end of my tutorial. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I do know it was a little bit messy. Maybe next time I'll prepare a script, but if you'd like to see me touch base on other areas on web development, using JavaScript, NodeJS on the server, and specifically React, as that's where I'm most passionate about, give me a like, drop a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Deadlifts and donuts out!